Hey, Disney fans, planners, and reluctant visitors. I'm Becky, and this is Touring Plans Teaches. We're back from a quick break to talk about an EPCOT strategy. On our last video, I asked you to drop the strategies that you wanted to hear for EPCOT in the comments, and we got a lot of responses, and some of them really asked for a targeted evening strategy. If you wanted to spend an evening in EPCOT, how would you do that? We got several variations of this. A couple asked for extended evening theme park hour strategies. A few asked for strategies that didn't focus on food and drink because a lot of EPCOT does focus on food and drink. So I'm going to do a little bit of a combo. I'm going to do one lengthy evening strategy for EPCOT, and then I'll do a flavor if you don't have access to extended evening theme park hours, because those are only 1 day a week and only for deluxe resort guests. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to give you sort of Becky's strategy for an evening in EPCOT, how I'd spend an evening in EPCOT with the appropriate blend of attractions, food, drink, and entertainment. Let's get started. For each of the strategies that we're going to cover today, we're going to assume that it's about a medium crowd level day on EPCOT. So you'll have to tweak these a little if you're visiting on a low crowd day or a high crowd day. And we're also going to assume that you're entering EPCOT from the main entrance. Now, this isn't the best way to enter EPCOT if you're doing an early entry strategy. If you can get to the International Gateway, that's the best way to enter in the morning. But for an evening, typically you're probably going to be hopping to EPCOT from a place like Magic Kingdom. This is a great way to sort of combo a day. If you visit the Magic Kingdom on a party day, you're probably wrapping up your day at Magic Kingdom around 4 o'clock and can then hop over to EPCOT on the monorail. Or you're driving over, you could Skyliner from Hollywood Studios or walk over from one of those Crescent Lake resorts. But we're going to assume for our strategy that you're starting at the main entrance. So if you're starting from the International Gateway instead, you might have a little bit of a different tactic, or you can make your way to the front entrance before working your way through this strategy. Our first one, we're going to take a shot at an EPCOT evening that starts around 4 or 4:30. So we're going to assume you spent your morning and your early afternoon at another park or at your resort, and you're making your way here to do some attractions before dinner and then to enjoy the evening. So that's what we're aiming for, is that 4 to 4:30 time frame. That means you're not going to get to do everything, but we're still going to start with quite a few attractions and try to mix in a little bit of the World Showcase as well, because if you go to EPCOT and you don't spend time in the World Showcase, you've really missed the point, in my opinion. We're going to start our afternoon by going to Spaceship Earth, especially if you've never been to EPCOT before. This is where you have to start your EPCOT evening, is with Spaceship Earth. It's the classic attraction. Thankfully, it shouldn't have too much of a wait this early in the afternoon. Additionally, we have a bunch of walls in Future World, part of EPCOT still. All those construction walls make it really hard to walk back and forth between World Discovery and World Nature, and so we want to avoid that as much as possible. We don't want to have to come back to Spaceship Earth later in our strategy. So if you want to do it, the first step is the time to do it. After we go to Spaceship Earth, we're going to work our way around World Nature by going to the seas first. I really want to make sure that you spend some time exploring the tanks and the main exhibits. Highlights there include the manatees, there's a sea turtle, a lot of really cool things to see in the tanks. You can ride the attraction on the way in as well. It's a Omni-Mover clamshell ride, but it isn't incredibly necessary. You're there to see the animals and enjoy the aquarium. After that, you're going to go from the seas to the land, which is right next door, and you need to experience Living with the Land, another classic. It takes up a lot of time, but it's worth it, and Soarin'. I typically recommend saving Soarin' for second, but since they're both in that land pavilion, you can check the wait times for both when you enter. If Soarin' is really low when you enter, go ahead and do that first. But with 3 theaters and on a medium crowd level day, early in the evening here, sort of around the 5 o'clock, 5:30 time frame, you shouldn't have too much of a wait for Soarin'. So we're going to recommend Living with the Land first and then Soarin' next. Give those crowds a little bit more time to slack off into the evening. By the time we finish these 4 attractions, it's probably going to be something like 6 o'clock. Again, on those higher crowd level days, it would be later than that because we're going to have more crowds in Future World. But we're going to use that 6 o'clock marker as our time to transition over into the World Showcase. That's because you're probably going to want to eat in the World Showcase and not in Future World. And I'm recommending that you sort of graze your way around the World Showcase. We'll go over specific dining tips later, but I don't have any dinner step on this strategy. And that's because you can choose from festival booths, you can get quick service meals, you're just going to be eating some food as you go, and there are so many options to choose from, you have your pick. So we're going to work our way around the World Showcase Lagoon clockwise, which in my opinion is the right way to do it. You're going to start at the Mexico Pavilion and ride Grand Fiesta Tour. It shouldn't have much of a wait. Everyone's going to be going to La Cava de Tequila instead of Grand Fiesta Tour at this point in the evening. Once you're finished in Mexico, you make your way to the Norway Pavilion, but we're going to skip Frozen Ever After. Again, this strategy assumes that you have access to the extended evening theme park hours, so we're going to save that really lengthy wait time for that part of our day instead of this one. Actually, wait times at Frozen Ever After are really, really high in the early evening, so you're going to want to avoid that for right now. Instead, you're going to keep working your way around the World Showcase Lagoon and go to the China Pavilion. And I really highly recommend that you make time to watch Reflections of China. We're not going to have time for Impressions de France or the Canada movie on this strategy, and I feel like you should see at least one of those during your time in World Showcase, so this is the one that I slotted into this strategy. After China, we keep going. We're going to hit Germany, we're going to hit Italy, we're going to hit the American Adventure. By this point in the evening, we're probably at the 7:30 to 8 o'clock range, probably closer to 8 o'clock. You're not going to be able to see the American Adventure. You're not going to be able to hear Voices of Liberty. All of those things have sort of ended for the day. But you want to at least spend some time in each of these pavilions and get a feel for the culture and the place. And we're finally going to make our way to the Japan Pavilion, ideally around the 8:30 to 8:45 time frame. And that's because the Japan Pavilion is a great place to watch Harmonious. Now, Harmonious isn't going to be around forever, but Harmonious, it's really important where you are along that World Showcase Lagoon so you get the best view of the water tacos and the big Stargate in the middle. Those are not the official names, those are the Becky names. So you can't just stand anywhere. For example, if you're standing over here by the International Gateway, you're not going to be able to see the pictures in the middle of the Stargate at all. So Japan is a really great spot to watch from. It's actually what I would consider the second best spot, the first being sort of the very entrance to World Showcase. But given our strategy, we're not going to walk all the way back over there just to watch Harmonious. So find yourself a spot in Japan. You can actually go up to the second level of the big department store there. That's a really popular spot though, so if you don't get there early, there might not be any room. Just find you a spot where you can see those water tacos, all the fountains. You'll have a good time watching Harmonious. Right after Harmonious ends is when the park officially closes and extended evening theme park hours begin. So in this strategy, we're assuming you're staying for those extended evening theme park hours. And if that's the case, you are going to book it from Harmonious, where you watched in Japan, to Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. You want to get to Remy's as soon as you can following the end of Harmonious. There's actually bonus points if you skip Harmonious altogether and just start your attractions at that point, because wait times are going to be a little lower. But as long as you get there sometime pretty early in those extended evening theme park hours, you're going to be okay for the rest of this strategy. Next, we're going to fill the rest of our extended evening theme park hours with these 3 attractions. And so extended evening theme park hours are 2 hours long. You've got a lot of walking and a lot of waiting at EPCOT. So once we finish with Remy, again, we're going to walk as quick as we can back to Norway to experience Frozen Ever After. Hopefully there won't be too much of a wait at this point, but it might be something like 20 minutes of a wait to do Frozen at this point in the evening. After that, we make our way back to World Discovery to do Test Track, and then we're going to aim to wrap up our night with Cosmic Rewind. Now, Cosmic Rewind is a virtual queue, so you have to have a boarding pass in order to be able to do it. We want to save that for very, very last in the night, because at this point, there will be no one else in line for Cosmic Rewind. Anyone else that had a boarding pass probably used it earlier on in these extended evening theme park hours, so you're probably going to be able to walk right on. It's going to be an empty ride. Plus, it's a really cool way to end your night at Epcot. This is a great attraction. Lots of people love it, so I like saving it for last. Keep in mind that both Test Track and Cosmic Rewind have really long pre-shows. That's like building your car in Test Track, and a bunch of the videos, I won't do spoilers, in Cosmic Rewind. So you have to make sure you time yourself correctly to give yourself time to make it to both of these. If you do want to do Cosmic Rewind, if we're hopping late to Epcot and we don't have extended theme park evening hours, we're out of luck. We're not going to be able to get a boarding pass and ride Cosmic Rewind. Since it's still on the virtual queue, at 1 p.m. is when they drop the second round of boarding passes for the day, and we're not getting to Epcot until 4 or 4:30. So chances are there aren't going to be any more boarding passes for us to pick up. But if it's an extended evening theme park hours night, there's another drop of boarding passes that happens at 6 p.m. and it's only for guests that are going to be there during those hours. So around 6 p.m., as you're getting into the World Showcase, maybe eating your dinner, you got to get that boarding pass so you can ride Cosmic Rewind at the end of your night. Now, getting to Epcot in the evening does mean that we're going to miss some things, so I want to call those out so you all don't call me out on them in the comments. There's a lot that Epcot has to offer during the day, and some of those things wrap up late into the afternoon and early into the evening. So by confining ourselves to these hours, we're going to miss out on a few of the things that make Epcot Epcot, in my opinion. Most character meet and greets are going to be wrapping up before we get a chance to do them. That's like Mickey Mouse outside of the short film theater, Vanellope and Joy. A lot of the characters that are more spontaneous around the World Showcase, you're not going to get to see many of those, and I didn't make time for any of them in my strategy. You can do those at other parks, though, too, so I don't consider this that big of a loss. The big loss for me is the live entertainment. Epcot has some of the best live entertainment of any park, and so you're not going to get to do things like see Sergio the Juggler in Italy, see some of the bands around the World Showcase, see the Janitors in Future World. All of those things typically happen in the middle of the day, late morning to early afternoon, so you're not going to be able to catch any of those show times in this strategy. We're also not going to have time for any table service meals. If we get to the park at 4:30 and have to leave at 9, or if you have extended evening theme park hours 11, you're going to use up an hour and a half of that to do a table service meal, and that's really just not feasible unless that's the most important thing to you. So I'm recommending all quick service dining for this strategy. We also have to cut pavilion time. So if you're familiar with the World Showcase, and I just ran through my strategy, you'll notice that we missed totally Morocco, the United Kingdom, and Canada. We just don't have time to get to them. Morocco is one of my personal favorites just to walk through and wander, so that's a pretty big loss, but you gotta do what you gotta do if you want to do the attractions in a short period of time. And as I mentioned before, we also lost some pavilion movies, which I think are another important part of the World Showcase. So just doing an evening at Epcot means you are missing a lot of things. Highly recommend if you're doing a longer stay to do a day during Epcot, and then maybe use this evening strategy on another night. At this point in the video is when several of you are thinking to yourselves, that sounded cool, Becky, but I can't afford to stay deluxe. That's just not what my family does, so I can't do extended evening theme park hours anyway. What is my Epcot evening gonna look like? Cause it looks like it's gonna be pretty short. And you're right. If you're getting to Epcot around 4 or 4:30, that only gives you a few hours before the park closes at 9 o'clock. But you can make good use of that time still, especially as a lot of the crowds are taking that early and late evening to eat and drink their way around the World Showcase. So what can we do with that time? Our late afternoon is going to look remarkably similar to our big, lengthy evening strategy that we just went through. In fact, it's just the same. You're going to start at the main entrance, do Spaceship Earth, and then work your way around Future World to the east, the World Nature part. And then you go up to World Showcase. So same late afternoon. Next is when we have to make our choice. If you're really focused on attractions and that's your whole purpose for going to Epcot in the evening, this would be the entirety of the rest of your evening based on average wait times throughout the day. So I wrap up Future World around 6 o'clock. I have until 9 o'clock, and it's going to take me those 3 hours at least to do those next 3 attractions. Test Track, Frozen Ever After, and Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. So you can do that, just know that it's going to take up the rest of your time. Your other option is to avoid those big 3 headliners and the long waits that they're going to have, and to take your time to enjoy the World Showcase and end your night with Harmonious. So similar to our extended evening strategy, you can get to the World Showcase around 6, and if you're working clockwise, you can probably get to Japan by 8:30 and then see Harmonious from there. Thankfully, once the park closes, you can still wander the World Showcase. So if you get to Japan, watch Harmonious from there, and then regret that you haven't seen some of the other pavilions, you can still walk around for a significant period of time before they're going to kick you out or you miss out on transportation. So take advantage of some of that post-park closing time to then finish up the World Showcase as well. Let's talk dining tips for both of these plans. I mentioned before we don't want to do table service dining as part of this strategy. We have limited time in Epcot, so we're going to eat and we're going to make it good food, but we're not going to sit down and have to wait for it. First option is festival booths. There are almost always festival booths at Epcot from which you can get food. Something like 17 days of the year where there aren't festival booths available. So chances are you're going to be able to eat from those. But the locations differ from festival to festival, as do the offerings, so you'll have to do a little research beforehand to figure out where you might want to stop. Keep in mind that especially on weekends and in the evenings, these festival booths will be crushed by locals, and so there will probably be long lines for those, and they'll take a little bit more time. Other options for counter service quick meals, especially along the World Showcase, I've listed here some of my favorites that typically have high quality. They do all mean that you're probably going to be eating later in the evening if you're following that clockwise strategy. Katsura Grill is in Japan. It's near your Harmonious viewing, so if you're willing to eat later and sort of grab food and then hunker in your spot and eat as you wait for Harmonious, that's a pretty good option. Regal Eagle has great barbecue in the American Adventure Pavilion. It's approachable for everyone, plenty of seating, another good option. And my favorite was Hall's Boulangerie and Patisserie, where they have plenty of sandwiches and pastries. Even if you choose one of the other options, always get dessert from here. So those are your dining tips for Epcot. Really, so many choices in Epcot, it's hard to go wrong there. Just make sure to get food that you think you'll like as you tour around. And finally, we're going to wrap things up this week with the strategy that no one asked for, but I can't help but share anyway. And this is sort of my choice of how I would spend an evening in Epcot with an appropriate mix of food, drink, attractions, and entertainment if I had this limited time. My late afternoon, once again, looks exactly the same. This is where I let myself insert a little bit of Becky's choice into every strategy. So I'm starting at Spaceship Earth, going to the seas, living with the land, and Soarin'. Here's where I start to diverge, though. In my early evening, instead of working my way around the World Showcase clockwise, as is right with the world, instead I'm going to go against the flow and against my own nature to go up sort of the right side of the World Showcase Lagoon instead. I'm going to start by catching Canada Far and Wide. I love these World Showcase movies, so I'm going to do that first. My dinner's going to be fish and chips because it's right there, high quality. On my way to go then see Impressions de France in the France Pavilion, and then I'll have my dessert of French pastries in that same pavilion. So this shouldn't actually take me too much time, but it does give me the chance to see those 2 movies, take my time, explore these pavilions that the other strategies didn't, and get my fill of some good food at the same time. Then I'm making my way back to Spaceship Earth while everyone else is crowding into World Showcase to see Harmonious. That's because I personally like the Beacons of Magic shows on Spaceship Earth much, much better than I like Harmonious. And a lot of other people feel the same way too. If you haven't ever seen Harmonious, by all means do it. But for a relaxing evening in Epcot, my choice is 100% those Beacons of Magic. And I'm avoiding the crowds because everyone else is headed to World Showcase at this time. This does yield a little bit of extra walking because I'm going all the way back to the front of the park before just working my way back to the World Showcase. At this point, the park is either closed or there's extended evening theme park hours. I'm going to assume it's an extended evening type of night, and so I'm going to take all of that time for extended evening and just wander the World Showcase. I love walking the World Showcase at night when it's dark, when the pavilions are lit up, and when they're almost empty. This is one of my favorite times to explore Epcot and really any part of Walt Disney World at night. Then at the very end of the night, I have to ride Cosmic Rewind, so hopefully I've gotten my boarding pass at that 6 p.m. drop, and so right before 11 p.m. when those hours close, I'm going to make my way back to the front of the park and redeem that to end my night on Cosmic Rewind. There we have it, 3 Epcot strategies for the price of 1. Obviously, I couldn't help myself and just narrow myself down to 1, so I had to present you with multiple options. If you have ideas for how you would spend your evening in Epcot, drop them in the comments below so other readers can see your opinions as well. Thanks for joining me this week, and we'll see you again next week on Touring Plans Teaches.